If you're listening to this episode in real time, then you are on it, and I'm so excited because I am opening up booking for 2 weeks only for free, yes, absolutely 100% free soul strategy mini readings. This is where I tell you your CEO archetype, your core gift, your business edge, which is what makes you stand apart from other businesses, and your impact direction, which tells you whether you're here to just be fully in alignment with yourself and create a ripple effect through your own alignment that impacts others, or whether you're really meant to live out your life purpose through fated connections and collaborations. So when you know these things, it becomes so much easier to build a business that's in alignment with you. Again, these sessions are only going to be open for 2 weeks, and you can lock yours in at briannakay.com/soul strategy. I cannot wait to chat with you and to get to know you and the heart behind your business a little bit deeper. No one tells you that midlife isn't just hot flashes, it's a full-on spiritual upgrade. So rebels, we tend to talk about menopause like it's purely a physical thing. But for so many women, it's also the moment life asks, are you going to keep living on autopilot, or are you ready to step into who you really are? It's a full-on spiritual awakening. The menopausal stage of life can really crack women open, not just hormonally, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So if you've been chasing success from a place of burnout or people-pleasing, midlife really has a way of calling BS on all of that. But before I announce today's guest, who's going to talk to us all about this midlife phase for women, I'd first like to let you know that my signature program, Rooted, has the doors open for pre-launch for just 2 more days. So the pre-launch sale ends for 2 more days until Wednesday if you're listening to this in real time. So make sure that you get on and take advantage of that. You'll save about $1,000 when you sign up during pre-launch. And I'll guide you through a process where we uncover your soul identity. We clear out all of the clutter that's holding you and holding your business back, that's keeping you playing small, keeping you stuck in limiting beliefs and revolving cycles. I'll challenge the way that you think that business works in the 3D world versus the way that I've come to learn that business works. And then I will help you to uncover your own soul contract, which is built based off of your astrology, numerology, human design, G keys, and the destiny matrix all rolled into one. And then we'll take your soul contract and we'll build a business plan around your unique blueprint for success. This is also the first round that I'm doing a group cohort and having group coaching in this. So we will have 3 group Q&A sessions, and we'll also have 3 group activation sessions. Our November one is an 11/11 portal activation, which I'm so excited for. It's going to be literally life-changing, and I would love to see you in. If you have any questions, just send me a DM on Instagram and I will answer all of your questions. Otherwise, you can head to briannakay.com/rooted, and I will also make sure to link this in the show notes. Okay, back to today's guest. I have Tania Davies, and she's a clinical hypnotherapist, psychotherapist, and spiritual facilitator, aka the consciousness change agent, who helps high-achieving women to reconnect with their inner wisdom, regulate their nervous systems, and to create success that actually feels good. She's the creator of the Pause with Purpose framework and strategic slowdown program, and she blends science, psychology, and spirituality to help women release old patterns, heal deeply, and awaken to their highest potential. We're going to talk about the spiritual stuff that nobody warns you about in midlife, how subconscious healing can transform not just your health, but also your business, and the kind of deep inner work that unlocks your next chapter. So whether you are currently in the menopausal phase or whether you're just prepping yourself for when you do reach that phase, this is going to be a must listen for all women out there. Welcome to Rebel CEO, the podcast where we ditch the rules and build businesses that don't just make money, but set your soul on fire. I'm Brianna Kay, your business coach, freedom advocate, and personal permission slip to dream bigger. I scaled my own business to 6 figures while breaking every mold that people told me to fit into, and now I'm here to help you do the same. I'll help you build a business and a life that's so deeply rooted in your purpose that you never feel like you missed out on the life that you were supposed to live. This is your time to root down, rise up, rebel, and manifest all of your wild goals. So grab your coffee, get cozy, and let's dive in. Tanya, thank you so much for being on the call. I'm really excited to dive into a little bit of what you have to offer and what you have to teach the rebels out there today. So before we really get into all of your interview questions, I actually usually I ask people who they are as a soul, but I feel like I want to switch my intro question. I feel like it's time to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to throw this one on you just spur of the moment, but I'm
Yep.
curious what you have to say. So, what would you say that your current purpose or your current passion in life is?
Oh, I like that one. That one's probably pretty cool for me, actually. Look, having been a reformed perfectionist in the corporate space a long time ago, I realized that my goal was actually to work at a deeper level with people, to get beyond the masking. And so my mission really at this moment is to help people help themselves. And I think
Oh,
that's probably the simplest way I could probably put that. So, yeah, my life's taken a complete 180, and I find myself in the very fortunate position now to be running a clinic here in South Australia, and absolutely living that mission every day and helping people help themselves.
amazing. So, what do you think that the real spiritual shift that's happening to women in their like midlife era is that people aren't talking about?
Yeah, look, I think it's a complete realignment that's going on. I don't know if you know, but some of the statistics out there for women in their midlife, 40s plus, is really like it's the highest rate for suicide for women. It's the higher rate of divorce. It's a period where all of a sudden what used to be okay for us is absolutely no longer working. And we could go down a deep, dark hole and stay there. But I think for a lot of us, we're yearning for a complete realignment of our lives. So all of that pushing and hustling and people pleasing and overachieving that we've always done our whole life to get us, into all the stuff that we wanted in the life that we set up. We're looking at it and going, is this all there is? Like, this can't be it, surely. And we're looking at a deeper level. It's almost like a yearning for something that's actually real, and not to say that our beautiful families and our houses, etc., aren't real, but like you started the whole conversation about what is my mission. I think women, even if they're not consciously aware of it, are trying to realign themselves with whatever their soul mission is. And I think it's just something not we're not talking about a lot. We're going, oh, it must be perimenopause and menopause. Women are losing the plot and they're going a little bit crazy. Not even close. What we're actually doing is just shedding all of those stories that are just BS stories. And all of a sudden, we're starting our souls lighting up and going, what are we really here for? And how do I align myself with that, raise my vibration, and, raise my consciousness so that those around me can join me on that mission?
Have you ever heard the term escaping the matrix?
Yeah, I work on it every day.
Yeah. So it sounds like people, well, women specifically, when they hit their 40s, they're starting to escape the matrix or starting to open up their eyes to the fact that sometimes the things that they've been working on for the last 40 years don't necessarily align with what they actually want in life. And then they maybe have that wake up call and that like hard reality moment where they're like, why have I been giving up all of the things that truly matter to put effort and energy into the things that don't? And now I'm already 40, like, do I
Yep.
have to start over or what?
Absolutely. I mean, I totally did. When I got to my 40s, I was like, okay, complete rescript my life. But I think there's that societal pressure that gets us there. I certainly knew I grew up doing all the good girl things, get the house, get the cars, do the travel, do this, ticking all those boxes, and then having the kids, find the husband, blah, blah, blah. And then you get to the point where you go, that's great. And don't get me wrong, I love all that stuff, but my soul's not deeply nourished in this moment. And that's a very personal journey. It's nothing to do with the external now. We've always relied on that external gratification. Now it's the internal. We need to look at that introspection and to really find what's right for us, what's our journey. And it
Mhm.
could be little tweaks, but for some people, it could be a complete life overhaul.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So for me, I'm about to turn 35 and I actually feel like I had my eyes open to this in a big way and maybe when I turn 40 I'll have like another revelation
Yeah.
in this realm also. I feel like life you're constantly like changing and growing and evolving and learning new things,
Yeah.
but I feel like I was kind of forced to confront some of the the facts of, like, me wanting a different lifestyle than I was admitting that I wanted before or even realizing that I wanted before through losing my sister because it really opened up my eyes to basically how backwards we had it because I could be stuck in I called it an editing cave because I did, wedding photography and videography, and that
Yeah.
just took up so much time, and the last time that I saw her, she wanted to come bring me a birthday present, and I told her that I was too busy essentially for her to bring me a birthday present, and she came anyway because she didn't care, but it was just, like, very eye-opening to me how backwards my priorities were in that moment
Mm.
because I could have so easily not seen her that last time, which was literally the day that she died.
Yeah.
So or
And
well,
interestingly, her soul knew that she needed to see you that day, so she would have made it happen.
right. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. So I feel like there there are definitely situations, and correct me if I'm wrong or if you don't think this is true, but I think there are situations that can push you down this path and then sometimes it's just a progression over time. So like there are different ways that you can get to this kind of soul level awakening, but for everyone it might look a little bit different.
Yeah, like, I liken it to ten-pin bowling sometimes where I'm assuming they're called the same in Australia as in America, but when you go ten-pin bowling and they put down the bumpers on the side for, younger kids or for those of us that aren't so great, and the ball just can't go into the gutters. Sometimes I like to think the universe just puts down the bumpers for us so that as we're traveling down this ten-pin bowling lane of life, we're rolling down and we kinda get towards the gutters, it kinda goes nudge, back this way, back this no, back this way, until we get to where our soul signed onto this contract in the first place to go, this is the mission. But we've got free will. We can go wherever we like. With the bumpers as sort of those guardrails to kind of go, maybe just come back this way a little bit. And that could be that near miss or that job you didn't get, all blessings because that's really sort of guiding you back to that main path. And I can tell you what, there's been a lot of moments where those guardrails have helped me come back into alignment. But if we can see those as not just challenges in our life, but as a gentle guidance, I think that also makes the hard parts of life really much easier to take.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I love that. So, why do you think that so many high achieving women are hitting burnout or feeling off around the 40s, that stage in life?
Yeah, I really does think it comes down to the fact that I think they're grieving in a really deep way. I think it's
Ooh.
grieving for their authenticity that they haven't allowed to come out yet. I think, as I said before, if I just look around, and I'm going to be really quite harsh now, if I look around at all the fakeness in the world, I look at the fake tans, the fake hair dyes, the fake nails, the fake that women feel as though they need to do to fit in for whatever reasons. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I haven't dyed my hair in my life. But what I'm saying is that there's this mask that goes on that we're so comfortable with now that I have clients that won't even show up in the world for a day without makeup. That saddens me that my soul, that little girl inside of me just wants to cry for her because we have basked ourselves so much that how could we possibly be aligned with where we want to be and need to be when we're so busy making sure there's no cracks in that exterior? And I feel as though there's that, like I said before, there's this realignment that's going on because women really want to be seen and heard and understood at such a deeper level now that all of their academic achievements and their work achievements have never given that deep level of satisfaction. Um, I think during this process, when people are going through the grieving, it's not just grieving for things that we've lost, it's also grieving for those things that could have been. And the could have beens is it's a real hard one. Even with grief with a loved one, I've certainly been through my fair share of loss. And those conversations you still have with yourself of, well, I wish I could still have this conversation with them. But if you live in the space where it's still okay to have all these conversations, we can start transforming that grief into something incredibly powerful. And I think that, the stress that women have on themselves nowadays, in particular, not excluding the men, it's such a level now that I don't think society's ever seen the amount of stress on women from so many different angles. If I look at what we call the sandwich generation now, certainly my generation, I've got young kids. I've got like an 11-year-old and an almost 15-year-old, and I've got elder, parents that are getting to that stage where they need to, a bit more love. And that's that sandwich generation of needing to look at both sides constantly to make sure everything's in alignment. And then we miss out. When was the last time we nourished our soul and we looked after ourselves as a priority? Because we're always, again, like I said before, looking at externally constantly to make sure everything's okay so our world doesn't cave in. But it starts in here. And when we continue to ignore that for too long, we all know the consequence eventually of all that falling
Mhm.
apart. We lose ourselves, suicide rates go up, etc. So, and not to mention divorce rates. I think if we manage to turn that mirror in on ourselves at the right time, which generally tends to happen, unfortunately, when we hit that perimenopause period, that is mid 40s, when that happens, I think women really start to want to strip away. It's a shedding of everything to go. If you can't handle me as I am in my pure essence, then you're not in my world. And I'd like
Mhm.
to think that that's where we're at, being able to be seen and heard for who we really are.
Yeah. You mentioned women grieving at that phase. And also, you mentioned some of your clients initially don't want to even show up in the world without makeup. So, do
Yeah.
you think part of what they might be grieving is that beauty of being young, quote unquote, because we kind of glorify our younger years and how good we actually looked in our 20s when we didn't even realize how good we looked. And in our culture in the US, I don't know if it's the same in Australia, we tend to feel like things are easier when you're younger, or it's easier to get more opportunities or more affection or love. We kind of tie it into our self-worth a lot of the time in our culture. So do you think that part of what they're grieving is that they no longer feel like they can cling on to that identity because they've hit a certain age where society tells them that they're no longer young and they associate that with being beautiful and worthy?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a huge proportion of it, absolutely. I also think if I can get a little bit deeper on this, I actually think it's a life threat. And that might sound a bit dramatic, but the subconscious mind, which is one of the areas that I specialize in, it doesn't know the difference between what's imagined and what's real. And if we're putting out thoughts and belief systems into the world that exactly what you just said, that our youth was this amazing time and space and place, and we're trying to recreate that, the subconscious mind is going to grieve over something that it feels as though it's lost. And so every time that we move back into that thought pattern, etc., it's going to continue to go through a grieving process, almost like PTSD. And so we get to this point where we will use anything artificial that we can to put this mask back on, where it means, editing our photos, making sure that we're standing a right way and we're posing correctly when we're taking a photo. Because if society sees us as anything else, the subconscious mind knows straight away that is a potential life threat. And it's interesting because our beautiful subconscious minds, which do love us and do like to protect us, they go from like 0 to, "Oh my god, everything's on fire," really quickly, and that's because it's trying to keep you safe. And if it thinks if you go outside and you're not wearing makeup and someone sees you, you will be exposed, and if you're exposed, you'll be out of the clan, and if you're out of the clan, you won't be able to survive. So it goes from here to here like that, and that sounds dramatic, but that's exactly what it's doing. And so a
Mhm.
lot of what we're going through without really realizing it is we're trying to stay safe when we're putting all this fluff around ourselves, as opposed to being able to stand in our sovereignty to go, "This is who I am." Like, would you believe it took me probably 40 years to embrace the fact that my hair's wavy? I used to blow dry it straight all the time, all this kind of stuff. And it's like, you know what? Get over yourself. Just let it do whatever the heck it does. So it's just those little simple things where it's like, well, my hair in the corporate space needs to be super professional and super straight and it needs to be clean and easy to manage. But here I am rocking up with crazy hair every day and don't care because that's who I am. And it's just those little tiny changes. But when we understand the subconscious mind is trying to look after us, it just does it in some pretty dramatic ways sometimes. That you are going to be okay if you go out without the fake tan or without the latest jeans or the latest handbag, whatever it is, and realize that the urge to go and do that is a safety mechanism. So when we can rationalize and move past that, we don't need to go out with all that stuff. We
Yeah.
can certainly find that safety in a different way.
Yeah. I remember when Snapchat first was popping off and everybody was using there was this one filter. Looking back, it's like super obvious it's a filter and it really looks nothing like you, but everyone felt like they looked so good with it. So the only pictures that you would ever take, you would use that one Snapchat filter and you looked like nice and sun-kissed and tan also. But then when I was doing photography, I started to realize that people didn't always love photos of themselves because they were so used to seeing themselves only through a filter. So then when it was
Sure.
their actual face in a photo, they just like didn't connect with it in the same way they did when they threw a filter over themselves. So it wasn't like an immediate thing that I implemented, but over the last couple of years maybe, I stopped using filters altogether
Beautiful.
in my videos and my photos, and now I don't even think about it because at some point I just made the connection that if I can't show up with my real face, I'm not honoring myself, I'm not loving myself if I can't even put my real face out into the world, and I also am okay with showing up without makeup, and I'm okay with fully doing makeup and hair and putting on a cute outfit and showing up too because I do like to bring in that more, like, stylish
Yeah,
side also, but it just depends on the day, and I'm not
absolutely.
embarrassed of
Yeah.
not having makeup on either
I
because
think
that's
the
my
difference there is you're not captive to it.
Mhm,
And I think for a lot of people, it paralyzes them in a way. And as
mhm.
a mother raising 2 beautiful daughters, you need to be able to set that example so that I can show up to soccer as a soccer coach and be completely okay in all my scrubs that I'm wearing because I'm out there to get dirty and get crazy, and I don't have to look pristine. And I think my kids do enjoy that. Occasionally, they're like, "Oh, mum." But on that note, but you were saying before about filters, I still remember there was a time when I was sitting on a Zoom meeting with a beautiful human being, and this is where, I don't know if you know, but Zoom's obviously it's got its
Mhm.
own filters. And she turned sideways, and as she turned, her lips and her eyebrows were still in that same position. And I realized, okay, she's using an interesting filter here today. And I said to her, you might just want to, while you're recording, just keep your head straight. So we always get caught out in these ways. And I think as soon as you start putting on those extra masks, there's that sort of part of your subconscious mind that's then also on hyper alert as to what if my makeup's not right? What if that nail falls off? What if? And so there's just that added pressure. And I'm sounds like I'm demonizing, beautifying ourselves. Not at all. I've been there, done that, still do that. What I am saying though is to be able to be completely okay with who you are within whatever container you're in. Okay.
Mhm.
And I think that's the key.
Yeah. How would you say that we should start moving towards being fully confident and okay with how we look, flaws and all?
Yeah. One baby step at a time. And
Yeah.
that definitely does mean making sure that you've cleared up, and I will talk about trauma quite a bit here, but there could be something traumatic in your background that is pushing you to that space. It's not you don't wake up one day and in terms of vanity, you don't just go, I've got to get, from top to top, I've got to get it all done. There's something driving you. It could be something that the boyfriend said, that the boss said, that the bully said when you were younger, that you're still repeating that message subconsciously to yourself. And that needs to be dealt with. Because I think once that's dealt with, and I grew up with horrific bullying, once you've dealt with all of that and you can just get on with your world without that baggage, I think that makes it a heck of a lot easier to take that one step at a time. And, for me, it's things like at my age, not bothering to dye my hair anymore and that for me is also the chemical load when you get to my age and you're moving through perimenopause and all that kind of stuff, you become very aware of toxins and where all these toxins are, because we do need to look after this vessel to a level that we've never looked after it before because of all of these environmental threats that we've got going on. And it's just the little things about understanding that that perfumes are an endocrine disruptor, and there's a whole bunch of education in that space. And I think because as being a parent as well, you always want to look after your kids so super well that you end up almost educating yourself to the point where you know more now than you could possibly want to have known because you're trying to look after someone. Well, you need to turn that back on yourself too and look after that little girl or boy within you. And
Mhm.
one baby step at a time is the safest way.
Yeah. Do you think that when you're trying to invest more time into yourself and looking after yourself, that also needs to happen in baby steps? Or do you think it's like you commit and you go hard on it?
Oh, that's an interesting one because for some people that I have met, they've had an existential crisis where all of a sudden they're coming to see me because they're deep in the depths of a spiritual crisis and they want to change everything overnight. I don't recommend it that way. That's pretty harsh, but sometimes the universe calls for that. Depends how deep they are into their level of, I'm going to call it in their bubble. And for others, it'll be a little cracks will occur and it'll break through. The light will come through, and all of a sudden they'll start changing little bits here and there. But there are those that'll want to go and do the spiritual retreat and quit their job and all this kind of stuff straight away. And it's like, let's just make sure we're maintaining some level of stability in our world, because your subconscious mind does need that stability. Because I think when you have that stability rather than changing everything overnight, it allows you to take it on at a level that your subconscious mind is ready to start
Mhm.
adjusting to. Otherwise, it's a huge shock to the system, and we get enough shocks to the system every day now when we do it on social media. We don't necessarily need more and more and more of that when we're trying to work on ourselves. And whilst I'd love to run off to a spiritual retreat, leave everything behind occasionally, I do think there's very easy and cheap ways we can do it. And for me, it just starts with 5 minutes of meditation and going inside. That's an easy way to start each day. And for someone who's a fast talker, a fast worker, fast thinker, having that 5 minutes, you know, just to start breathing, just to go inside and listen to my voices, trust in myself again, that's where your subconscious mind starts to go, hang on a minute, we are safe. We are okay. We can do this. And I do think that, yep, there's two very different sides to that. It's a spectrum, and neither is right nor wrong. It's to work in the grey space on that one. But I do think that the universe will probably dictate which end you go to, and I hope for most people it is the gentle approach.
Yeah, I almost wonder if the people who want to change everything at one time are going through some sort of Kundalini awakening, which I'm not overly familiar with, but I've heard that it's very,
Dramatic.
very extreme all at once. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I feel like when you're doing a little bit at a time, it's like this one area lights up, like maybe all of a sudden you're interested in your physical health, and then it's like you focus on that, and then once you kind of have that under your belt to some extent, then it's like, "Oh my gosh, I want to look into this new modality," and then you move into that, and it's like slowly
yes.
blossoming over time.
I think that
So
is probably one of the most beautiful and gentle ways for it to happen rather than a big slap in the face Kundalini awakening, which I have
yeah.
been there. That has occurred to me. But we need to also, with that moment, we need to just make sure that we understand that it's part of the bigger picture. So that we
Mhm.
don't get sucked into just that moment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So then you practice hypnotherapy. What are some patterns or beliefs that you've seen come up for women during your subconscious healing work?
Oh, so many, but if you can get it down to just a couple, it'll be the fundamental belief systems that I think most people will struggle with. The concept that I'm not good enough, that I'm not
Ooh.
loved, that I don't belong. Those three alone. Gosh, if I could just work on those three with most people, we could pretty much unravel every single other belief system that they've got, because they all stem back from these fundamental beliefs about, am I loved? Do I belong? And am I even good enough? And it's simple for me. When I was younger, I really loved physics until I got to my year 12 physics exam, and there was 2 pages of the physics exam that were stuck together. And I didn't know that. How could I have known that? Until I got out and everyone was talking about those questions that I didn't see. And I was like, just very confused. And I went in and I saw the lecturer and I said, what is everybody talking about? And he went back to my paperwork and he pulled the papers apart. And my heart sank, because in Australia, you get like one shot at it. And he said, like, there's nothing I can do. And so I literally missed out on 2 full pages of questions for my physics exam. And of course, in that split second, my brain went, I'm not good at physics. I hate physics. And I shut that away for so many years. And I ended up not doing science at university, a whole bunch of stuff that occurred from that moment. Now that I've unraveled that and I'm into quantum physics, I'm into you name it right now, I'm into it. And I could get really upset with that, really angry at that, or I could understand that that's how important it is to undo what seems like such an innocent moment, but it was a trauma. It wasn't trauma in the typical sense of what we call a tier one trauma. I didn't go out and have a car accident or lose a limb, etc. But for me, in that moment as a teenager, that was a significant trauma that actually then guided the rest of my, young adult life until I probably got into my 30s. All of a sudden, I started to go, "What is going on? I love physics. I'm great at physics. Um, and obviously that was the universe just sort of guiding me in a different direction to go, yeah, but you didn't need to be a scientist this life. And that's another story. We can get into that. But in terms of what we were talking about here, like I think those three fundamental belief systems, if everybody was to sit with those, they'd start to really realize that most of the problems that come up in their world could all be tied back to those three key points. Um, the hardest one for most people, which does take a while for them to unravel sometimes it's instantaneously, but it can take a little bit of love because we have to unravel a lot of belief systems around it, is the fact that I'm not good enough. And
Mhm.
I don't think there's a person that's come through my office to do my transformational work that hasn't gone, "Wow, I was carrying that."
Mhm. Yeah. When you said that one, I was like, "Ooh, that's my big one." In my program Rooted, I walk my students through a process that I call it the timeline exercise, where they just in simple terms, they pick out memories they have from growing up, and I did this myself also. And a lot of my memories that I have that imprinted these negative feelings in me that I was still holding on to, they all stemmed back to the "I'm not good enough." And they all obviously show up in slightly different ways, but, like, at the core of each of the beliefs that I hold on to from those memories is I'm not good enough, and if I could wipe out the I'm not good enough,
Yeah,
then those other memories become less potent and hold less weight too because I know that they're just not true. But sometimes we hold on to that, or most of the time, we hold on to that so deeply at the subconscious level, and our
yes.
conscious mind could have all of this positive messaging and we could know that we're good enough,
Yeah.
but our subconscious could still hold on to that.
And it's interesting just to help people understand in a bigger picture as to why there's this battle going on. Well, if you think of the conscious mind as only 5% of the operating system of your brain, where willpower exists and all your analytics and language sit, 95% is the subconscious mind, the place of imagination. All your emotions, all of the physical functions of the body sit into this space. So 95 versus 5%. If the subconscious mind, which let's face it, it has the intelligence level of about a 9-year-old, it's very stubborn, and it's not necessarily overly logical. What it's going to do is it's always going to win. And it takes those moments where the conscious mind and the subconscious mind align. That's where you're kicking goals and you're feeling amazing and you're really feeling that frequency through your body. Most of the time, the reason you can't get up and you can't go to the gym is because the subconscious mind is keeping you safe and protected. It's going, nope, that gym's not for me. And there's a lot of reasons why that gym might not be safe for you, and none of it is conscious. It's all in the subconscious mind. So yeah, there's a bit of a battle going on, battle of the titan.
Yeah, and I've heard that the subconscious mind doesn't necessarily care if you're happy, it cares if you're safe. So if
Always.
it knows the cycle that you're in right now is safe because you've been doing it, even if you're not happy, it's going to try to keep you there.
Absolutely. It doesn't really give a rat's whether you're happy or not. It's always about, are you safe, number 1. And if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's always making sure the very bottom level of Maslow's hierarchy, or the shelter, can you eat, can you drink, all that kind of stuff is taken care of first. Now, self-actualization is right up the top. So it's not going to put you in a Zen Buddhist state unless you've got all of this taken care of first. And so, for example, if you're worried about your job at work, it'll draw a straight line to, you're not going to have any money, you won't be able to eat, you'll be out in the streets, you're not going to be safe. And so it's going to be thinking about that constantly and making sure that's stable. And so we wonder why we're always so stressed. Well, at the end of the day, your subconscious mind is so busy patrolling. We call it the sentry of the mind. It's constantly patrolling to make sure that part of the hierarchy is okay. And for most people in this day and age, it's actually not.
Mhm. Yeah. So how do you know if what you're feeling is just normal stress, if there's such a thing as normal stress, or if it's actually your body's way of asking you to change something about your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, let's not demonize stress. That we need a good level of stress in our body. Good stress would be things such as going for a gentle run or a jog, those kind of things, or that moment that as soon as you jump in a car, you should feel a heightened level of stress. That sounds terrible, but we're not designed to be in cars. So when we get into a car, we should feel a slight heightened sense of stress so that we are on alert. That's good stress. What I think is happening right now is, I think if we think of stress, stress is situational, or at least should be, but burnout is existential. It's like the existential crisis that's going on. So we start going, okay, stress is something along the lines of, oh, this deadline's killing me. But burnout's going to, why doesn't any of this feel like it has any meaning to me anymore? You can sort of see the difference that's going on there. And I think there's a difference between stress and chronic stress. I think for me personally, I went through chronic stress because that low level of stress started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it festered and it didn't matter what I could do. I couldn't get out of it. And then I had kids and a house and cars and the level of pressure from my job. And it was just, and there's no release valve. I thought I was putting release valves in, but I really, really wasn't. And in Australia, we're pretty good. And I know this is different in America as opposed to Australia, but in Australia, we're pretty good about taking our holidays or our annual leave. We get 4 weeks a year of annual leave, and we will take them. Even in the high corporate rankings, we make sure we kind of get in there. But I definitely know there's a culture in America of not necessarily leaning into your leave because you might risk your job, etc. Well, I think that for us helps us be a little less stressed, but I still think, look, I've seen both, pretty much the whole Western world, so to speak. The stress levels are getting out of control compared to, I can only speak for when I was in my 20s in the workplace. I thought I was stressed then. Holy cow. Now that's that completely fresh perspective of, global situations occurring, social media constantly telling us what to do. There's a whole bunch going on, but I think it's so easy now for that stress to move into that burnout much quicker than it's ever done before because there's no release valve for anyone. And so we are turning to that, that spiritual crisis that's going on and wanting to throw our hands up in the air and go, well, I'm done. I don't get it. Is this it? It's all meaningless.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I feel like as entrepreneurs specifically too, we a lot of the time find ourselves in a situation where we can go on a vacation, but we're still wanting to post on social media or wanting to
Mm,
check emails or do these little things that if you had a corporate job, you might not actually have to do those. So, as entrepreneurs, we get that added stress that way if we're not able to fully disconnect and, like you touched on, take our vacations. And then also with the social media world, it can feel like we're constantly being told, this is the right way to run your business, this is the wrong way to run your business. And it can just slowly add on layers of stress, and it can be hard to figure out like what is actually worth listening to and what do I just need to throw away and stay in my own lane when I hear. So for
yeah,
social media specifically, do you have any tips to avoid social media stress and overwhelm for like oh, I should be doing that?
yeah. I said the first thing I would do would be to vet the people that you have in your feed really, really well. There's a lot of just white noise out there, and a lot of people. And I made this observation quite recently with someone that people out there claiming that I'll help you get to the next six figures or seven figure monthly incomes, etc., etc. And if you dig deep enough, you'll realize they're not even close to that themselves. So again, we were talking about it before about this mask or this bravado that people put on. My number one value is authenticity. Now, for me, I look at all of that and just go, it's all so loud. Just be quiet because I'm a marketer by trade. And for me, traditional marketing, I like to go back to the basic concepts of traditional marketing. So if I look at somebody's pitch that they're doing or whatever they're putting out there as their latest and greatest, I'll sit back and go, where are they tapping into the five basic fundamental psychological needs within the marketing space that people need to either purchase something or to follow a different belief system, etc.? And if it's all just white noise and it has no meaning behind it, move on. Curate your feed so none of these people exist within it. And go to those people that have got absolute street cred, that that they've got the proof that what they're doing is really, really working. Okay. And I would say don't spend too long on there either. Okay. Well, as entrepreneurs, we spend way too much time posting and doing all this kind of stuff. We miss out on the living part when we keep doing that. And for me, I think you're also going to find that connection better face to face with people, networking events, etc. I mean, we had a beautiful networking here in my clinic, in my studio that we have at the clinic last week. And the people who came around, not once did anyone touch their phones. It was glorious to watch. And the deep level of connection, people very, very quickly got beyond the surface level conversations. And there was a deep level connection going on. And I think that's what social media is moving towards with some people. I don't think oversharing is the right space to be in or, trauma bonding with each other. but I deep think that deeper sense of just get to the point. Really stop the fluff. And if you don't have anything with value, real value, move on. Okay. And I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to coach the coaches and etc. And I am somebody that does coach the coaches. But if your whole business plan is based on the fact that you've not necessarily had success with the one-on-ones and it's all about coaching the coaches, I think you're missing a whole fundamental part of the plan. And I think you just need to be aware of that as an entrepreneur. Watch for those scenarios where people are purely just making money off of an idea, not necessarily having any evidence behind what they're doing or what their philosophy is for business, because there's so much white noise there.
Yeah. So then would you say the people who are trying to coach the coaches is the example you came that instead of just jumping to like the finish line and trying to make money off of that, that they kind of need to put in the work and prove that they're able to get clients results along the way?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I get a lot of fresh hypnotherapists that like to give me a call, people in the spiritual space that have just moved into business. I do a lot of mentoring and coaching in that space. And a lot of them kind of want to jump to well, I want to teach others how to do this. And it's like, that you need to be in the trenches. You need to understand the complexities of all the different levels of conversations that are going to come through your office. And I've been doing one-on-ones for almost 9 years now. And I can tell you, I feel like I've seen everything under the sun, and I know the universe is laughing its backside off right now. And the universe will always challenge you when you say something like that, Tanya. But I've seen so much stuff in my office that now I can coach the coaches and the therapists, etc., because I've lived those really hard moments, like through COVID, trying to keep the clinic open and seeing what people were going through during COVID, all of the in the trenches moments with people. If you skip that whole stage, you can't show up in your authenticity. They're going to see through it really, really quickly. When you start being asked the hard questions, how did you get through this moment? What was this like? Yeah, it's going to show up. It'll be
Mhm.
very
Yeah.
obvious.
And then to clarify for listeners, there's absolutely nothing wrong with starting and getting yourself out there and putting yourself into the workforce and learning the ropes.
Absolutely.
I think what Tanya is saying is just don't be inauthentic and don't lie about where you are and have these vanity metrics that aren't true just to gain sales. Like you have to actually know and live by what you're teaching other people. Is that correct?
100% correct. Yeah. Vanity metrics is going to get you nowhere. You showing up, even if it's your first day on the job, and showing up and being authentic in that space, people will resonate with you through that authenticity.
Mhm. Yeah. And then I want to circle back to what we were talking about towards the beginning of the conversation with women in that midlife phase, because I know that
Mhm.
you have so much more wisdom to share there. So, when women are in their, you said 40s is kind of what you consider the start of the midlife
Yeah.
age,
I'm
right?
going to say 45 so that people don't get annoyed with me. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, for women who are in that phase of life and they feel like their mental health, their physical health, maybe all of it is kind of starting to decline, and they're getting to that point where they are going through that crisis that we mentioned earlier, you kind of see it as the start of something really big and something positive. Can you
Yes.
explain that?
Yeah, I think, look, everything for me, it's the way we tackle anything in life. And just for context, things like perimenopause and that kind of stuff, that can start at 35. So,
Oh,
yes,
no.
yeah, can, not necessarily will. So for me, the moment I hit 46, it was like somebody just turned on the light switch and I went, no, what's happening? Because I've been super sporty my whole life and, the weight piled on. And oh my gosh, everything I used to do just didn't work. And my hormones were going crazy. I've got a teenager going through, puberty and one almost going through puberty. And then I'm going at the other end of that. And it's like, the stress is high. It was a moment you just go, okay, I'm transitioning into another phase in my existence and I need to reframe it in that way because otherwise I can go down a very dark rabbit hole with all this. And that is not something that's going to help anyone, especially given that I call myself like the CEO of my household. I look after the life admin, we get stuff done. If that all falls apart, the whole system falls apart. So, like most women going through all this, you sit there and you go, I've got such bad brain fog, I don't even know how to think my way through the next 10 minutes, let alone how am I going to run a business, run a family, look after parents, all this kind of stuff. So, to me, it does come down to the framing that we have around this. And yes, the stuff that you used to do will not work, and that's okay. It's forcing you to move into a new phase of understanding of to how to love your body, how to nourish your soul, how to move through the stress and convert the stress into a positive influence in your life and understanding where your boundaries are at. So for me, I run everything in my world comes under this concept of the strategic slowdown. And why? Because what I've started to realize is that you cannot do any of the deeper work at the pace in which we live our life 24/7. And so we need to strategically find those moments where we can create pockets where we really can reframe and we can go inside and we can have that space to understand ourselves at a much deeper level. It's not going to happen while you're driving down the freeway, while you're listening to that podcast, etc. And please don't try it. What I am saying is take those moments where you can sit with yourself and journal if you need to, or meditate and understand the voices that are coming up for you. And people are like, "Oh, I don't have voices. I'm not crazy." Yeah, you do. We all do. And they all just have different tones and different contexts. And some of them can be really bossy, really bitchy. Some of them can be super gentle and caring and kind, but we don't often hear those as loudly. And so getting the louder voices just to quieten down a bit and understand, what am I being pushed into right now? This phase and transition of my life, whether it's your 46 or your 50, wherever you're at, that moment, I want you to lean into it and I want you to embrace it. It's almost like you're shedding the BS of the world. And now you're stepping in almost like a metamorphosis of a butterfly. You're now coming out and stepping into something that you get to design, not that somebody forces you to be in. And you get to work out what that's going to be for you without all the stories of the past. And you've got to lean in and do the work. You've got to face your shadow. You've got to get rid of your traumas and all those crappy belief systems. And when you can do that, beyond time, that transformation that's occurring, then you can step into that sense of freedom. And I get to see that in my office, and that makes me super excited when that happens with women and men. I work with men too, but the majority is women. And when they get to lean into, this phase of my life is freedom. Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so do you say that phase of their life is freedom because the women who've chosen to have children, for the most part, their children are at the stage where they don't need that much care, so they actually are able to focus on themselves, or why do you look at it as freedom?
It's freedom at a soul level. It's not necessarily freedom at a logistical level, because I certainly know that as a soccer mum, soccer coach, soccer everything, running businesses and all that other stuff, there's not much time in the diary occasionally, but we've got to make that time in the diary. I'm talking about more of a freedom at a cellular level where the body gets to decide, I'm not going to hold on to this anymore. There's a great book out there called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and it'll tell you that if you hold on to your trauma, your body's going to react. So by the time you start getting to my age and my phase in life, you're going to start to see things coming up. And for some people, it could be horrific things like cancers. But for majority of us, it's going to be things. For me, there was body aches and pains in places that I'd never even knew I had places. And to work and understand that that's actually just my body holding on to the stress and the tension of things I'm not dealing with properly, and to lean into that and deal with it. Because if something's made it down to the physical level of the body, past all the different levels of your aura, and it's down in the physical, now you've missed all the signs. Now you kind of have to reverse engineer and work backwards to go, all right, what is it I missed? What emotion is being held in, say, my uterus, my gut, my neck? What emotion is that? And move it on. Because emotions, by the very nature of the word, are in motion. They should come. They should get your attention. They should leave a message or a learning behind, and then they should go. But most of us hold on to them like they're a precious little bundle, and we don't want to let them go because it allows us to create a story around them, and then we get to play the victim. But the idea here is get rid of the emotion, keep the lesson. And I can tell you what, stepping into some of the other work that I do, working in the quantum space, I work with people who experience other times and spaces, and some will call it past life regression. I call it other times and spaces, where you will see the same problem occurring, one existence after the next, after the next, after the same problem, different scenarios. And it's because we've not dealt with it it continues to loop until you get the message. And I can't remember what the original question was now, but by the time we have dealt with all this kind of stuff, we have to sit back with ourselves and go, have I created enough space for me to find a level of freedom where I don't have to be anything for anyone? This is about me just being me, and I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
Yeah, at first I was thinking it sounded like this stage in life might be almost an opportunity to reinvent yourself, which I still think for some it could if they want to
Yes.
look at it that way.
Yep.
But beyond that, it's also a time for women to come home to themselves. But I fully believe that knowledge is power, and we could possibly, it sounds like, make this stage that we are hopefully all going to approach with menopause at some point easier on ourselves if we start doing some of that work earlier.
Agreed.
So okay, awesome. So if somebody's listening and they're like, "Well, I'm not quite at the stage where menopause is around the corner yet, but I wanna make sure that I'm making that phase of my life so easy and so enjoyable," how can they start to, I guess, do the inner work to work through it earlier?
Yeah, and look, it's not all about that stage of our life, the perimenopause, etc. It's getting a lot more of a conversation nowadays in media, which I think is fantastic to understand it because it's been hidden for so long, and women have just been going through it in silence and not talking about it. But look, for me, my spiritual awakening was starting in my 20s when I lost a very dear grandfather to me. And then it just continued with more losses in the family. And I just moved deeper and deeper into that spiritual space. I didn't go completely off the woo woo rails until I was probably in my late 30s, 40s. Um, but for me, it's a beautiful place to be in that space because I have been able to step up and face my shadows and all of my traumas one on one and walk away from it going, I'm a better person for having dealt with that. And, I've dealt, like I've mentioned already, I've dealt with lots of bullying, but for me, I've dealt with a whole bunch of medical trauma. I've had over 18 operations in my life, and the body just kept the score on all of that stuff. And it was a hard lesson to go, all right, well, do I want to go back and face all of those medical traumas and et cetera, and all the gaslighting, everything that's occurred over the years? Because I was quite happy in my victimhood, blaming all the doctors and the medical system. But no, it took a requirement to step up and go, hang on a minute, you make your clients do this, you got to do it too. And once I'd done that, that sense of freedom, I wish that for everyone to be able to go, I can face the biggest traumas in my life, and because I know there's no emotion attached to them anymore, they're just like something that's just happened on a movie that you don't really care about the movie. And that's that sense of freedom that we talk about. So I can look back, and trigger warning here, I can look back at my grandmother's suicide and I can go, that was a horrific event. But wow, check out the trajectory of my life from me having been through that moment, dealt with that moment, and everything that's occurred since that moment. What an amazing transformational gift she's given me by being exposed to that as part of our soul contract. That I can deal with that, move on from that, and allow other people to move on from their own experiences through suicide, etc., and death, and to be in a sense of freedom with it. There's no heaviness, there's no weight behind it. And I wish that for anybody that's been through that space. And yeah, it's interesting that you called it's a homecoming. I have a program called the Homecoming Arc for that very reason, that it is that sense of homecoming. Um, and I think it's a perfect way to describe it, is a coming home to who you genuinely truly are in that space.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the little connection and synchronicity there.
Yeah.
Are there any trends or is there any common advice or tips that you see related to menopause that you either want to say like, "Yes, this is amazing, go for it," or "That is a load of crap, definitely don't follow that advice"?
Ooh, that's a loaded one. Look, I think I would just say genuinely, not necessarily just in the perimenopause space, but I think for anyone going through the journey of self transformation, be aware of spiritual bypassing. Okay, that is an absolute bee in my bonnet that somebody will go, oh, love and light all over everything. Well, don't love and light me. I will love and light myself. It's all good. But what I'm saying here is that we can sometimes just dismiss the work that needs to be done by being a little bit aloof with our spiritual understanding of the world and ignoring what really needs to be done. And if somebody, for example, has come in your world and been quite horrific to you, you could turn around and go, oh, I forgive them. They didn't know what they were doing, etc. True, probably. But in terms of boundaries, what are you learning from this moment? This is spiritual bypassing at its best. To learn that, your boundaries are so fundamental to your sovereignty, who you are, and how your life is going to evolve around you. If you allow somebody to trample all over your boundaries, and I do mean let the small stuff go. I'm talking about stuff that really matters here. And pretending that everybody at a soul level meant well, not necessarily. And this could be a lesson for you in this moment to step up, use your voice, be seen, be heard, be clear, be kind, be compassionate, but get your message across. Don't bypass this by just thinking that, oh, I'm sure their soul or whoever they were didn't mean so badly. That is where that will continue to come back to you until you have learnt the lesson of stepping up and having your own voice and speaking your own truth. And I see that time and time and time again, where we ignore and we dismiss the signals from the universe for us to learn something. So, one of the biggest things I would say there is stop the spiritual bypassing. Learn boundaries, learn communication, learn who you are at a deeper soul level. And if you need to go and do that work with someone, great. Do your background with them and make sure that you understand who they are at a fundamental level and that they've done the work. That is a huge one. Like, I would never see a therapist or a coach or anyone unless I could see that they've absolutely done the work and continue to do the work pretty much every day. And they live by what they say, not just go and do what I tell you to do. Um, I think some of the other things, in terms of the things I would definitely lean into, is I would lean into the conversation of what is right for you, and specifically for you, because there's some big conversations out there about, oh, I'm just going to give perimenopause a go here. Is HRT right for me? Is it not right for me? And there's, everyone likes to find a reason to fight with each other. And it's no one's conversation other than the person themselves with their own research and their own medical advice that they go and seek for themselves, because we all have this thing called confirmation bias. And if we hold a belief system, we will find the evidence that will support that belief system. And we're pretty clever, us human beings. And so we're going to find it. So we just need to be aware that we're definitely checking all sides of the story, not just leaning into one level of evidence when we're looking for answers to things. So I think there's a couple there. But I also think, look, first and foremost, if it's right for you, it's right for you. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there that like to tell you what not to do. I'm not going to do that, other than the spiritual bypassing one. That one I'm going to leave there.
Yeah. So then if somebody is watching a loved one, like a mom, go through menopause right now and they want to know how they can help support them in that transition phase of their lives, what are some ways that we could help our loved ones?
Yeah. Listen, first and foremost, just listen. Because sometimes they've got no clue what's even going on for themselves. They could well and truly be in denial. I knew for quite some time there I was in denial with no, 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 I'm not ready for any of this yet. Nope, nope, nope. So just be there to support them, listen. Sometimes things can be fixed with a hug. They really can. Understand it's not personal. And I'm going to say this to all the husbands and partners out there. Majority of the time, it's not personal, sweetheart. We are going through something so full on for ourselves that our whole world is being thrown on its head. And I literally have a worksheet that I give to the people that come through my office, the men and the women, for them to understand there's over 40 different signs and symptoms of perimenopause. And every single person's journey doing this is different. So let's not pretend it's a cookie cutter solution for this. But first and foremost, it's always just going to be listen. Because in that moment, it could just be, I just need to go away for a day and just do something that I just need to walk on the beach by myself for a day. That's not personal. Make it happen. Help them make it happen. It could just be, I've had enough making school lunches. I just need a hug. It could be anything in that moment. Yeah, there's deeper questions in there that if people haven't done the trauma work, the shadow work to release their stuff, it could be a lot worse. So there is going to be moments where they do need that level of professional support. Watch out for that. Don't imply. Always ask. And if you need to do some research to be able to present somebody with an opportunity of, have you checked this out? Have you looked at, like, for, I know there's the Australian Menopause Society, there'll be the same in America, that kind of thing. There's information available so you can educate yourself and understand what they're potentially going through, but always start that level of communication first. Never ever assume.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like we definitely covered more than I even anticipated covering on this call. And I think that I wanted to go down so many different like little rabbit holes with you. But at some point I was like, okay, we're going to need to schedule a call for that. We're going to need to schedule a call for that because you have so many little zones of genius, it
Thank
seems
you.
like. But if somebody wants to follow along with you a little bit more and possibly learn from you, see what else you have to offer that we didn't have the chance to tackle in this conversation, then where can they find you?
Yeah, look, probably the easiest way is just through my website, and they'll be able to head off into many different directions and down many rabbit holes that way. But it's yeah, Tanya with an I, davies.com. And from that space, they'll be able to find pretty much everything they need. And feel free to reach out. I'm very easy to contact, and I reply to everything. I'm a human being.
Thanks for tuning in to Rebel CEO. If today's episode lit a fire under you, I would love if you would hit subscribe, leave a rating, and drop a review. That little action helps more purpose driven women like you find this show. And make sure that you're not keeping all of this magic to yourself. Share this episode with a friend who's ready to ditch the rules and build a life that actually feels good. If you're looking for a little one-on-one connection, slide into my DMs on Instagram at rebel.ceo.podcast. Until next time, keep breaking the rules, chasing your purpose, and creating the life that you were meant for. I'll see you in the next episode.